Coming up on the program, we're going to talk about the bees that we're losing and what we can do to help prevent the loss of colonies, and some of the fails that we've experienced in our garden this year.
And we have founder of A World for Change TV, Wayne Meador. He's an environmentalist and a self-sustainable expert. And we're also going to talk about a way to have an orchard in your home. All that more coming up today on the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast.
The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast is permeating into your ears with your host, Joey Bear.
And it could be the weeds. Some gardeners try to get all the weeds out of their garden. Other gardeners leave them in their garden. It's really a decision that you need to make. There's benefits to both sides of that. It's just something that you need to figure out what you want to do for your garden.
And Holly Bear.
Canning is a science. When you're canning, you want to make sure you follow the directions, follow the recipe, don't cut corners, don't replace things. It's crucial to you, your health, and your family.
They're professional gardeners with full-time jobs, and they're on the air now.
Welcome, friends, gardening friends, gardeners of all ages, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast, a podcast for the health-conscious organic gardener worldwide. I am your host, Joy Baird. Beside me is my wife, co-host, gardening partner, and best friend,
Holly Baird.
Behind the TWVG microphone here at the WI Garden Media Studios in southeast Wisconsin. The information that you're going to hear is vital and important to your garden, no matter the growing zone. You just may have to tweak some of the dates and times you applied for. If you're tuning in for the very first time, we welcome you to the program and encourage you and invite you to check out the previous podcast and guests we've had on the show. You can find that information at the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com. Click on the podcast tab at the top of the page, and you can scroll through all previous podcasts and topics. If you're tuning in and you may not know who we are, we welcome you. And we'll briefly talk about who we are, what we do, and then we'll get into how we can start saving the bees.
So what we do, Joey and I, is we have a website where we put videos about how to grow food, what to do with the food you grow, how to become more self-sustainable, and living organically. We also have a quarterly digital magazine that we produce every quarter, every 3 months, and it's a full-color free digital magazine online for you to download, to read, to do whatever you need with printout for your enjoyment. We also have this podcast.
So that's just a little bit about what we do and who we are. So let's get into our main topic for the program today, and that is bees. Bees pollinate a little over about 101 different vegetables that we eat. Now, that's a rough estimate, but their NPR had reported that about 40% of beekeepers had colony collapse last year. And there's a number of reasons why that may be, but the ultimate end result is if we lose bees, we lose a large majority of the things that we enjoy eating, things that we enjoy growing. True enough, you can go out and hand pollinate, but why would you need to if you can have bees and other insects doing that for you?
One thing that they say is responsible for bee decline is the use of what's called neonicotinoid pesticides, also known as neonics, and that includes things like glyphosate, which is found in Roundup.
Now, true enough that there are some applications where chemicals are needed.
Right.
It's just the responsibility of using the chemicals correctly and in the right dosage. Now, you were speaking about the
glyphosate,
which is in Roundup.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the products that we have tested, seen, and found, and will use and have seen that it works very effectively is one of the sponsors on the podcast here. And we're not picking them out because they're our favorites. We're simply informing you of a product that does work, that is derived from citrus oil. And there's a lot of natural, it's OMRI listed, it's Avenger Organics.
Mm-hmm.
Or AvengerOrganic.com, or Avenger Weed Killer. Has a citrus aroma, works very well in cloudy and cool conditions as low as 40 degrees. and we're not singling them out and favoritism. We're simply letting you know that that is an alternative to having to go to a big box store and pay a lot of money and buying Roundup from a major biotech chemical company.
Right. So that's definitely an option there. Another thing you can do, if possible, would be to keep your own bees. This will help, obviously, the bee population.
Now, based on where you're at, who you are, and what rules or laws that you decide or choose to follow, in some areas you're required to get a certification and a license in order to take care of bees. Whether you choose to do that or not is totally your business. I don't think, if as long my thought on it is, if you have somebody who does it for a living or a hobby who can show you the proper ways to go about maintaining a hive, I see no reason.
You can actually, a lot of times if you go to Craigslist and you can search for beehives or raw honey, a lot of times you can find a small beekeeper that might be willing to sell some of their hives or their queens or whatever, and maybe they can give you some information, some insight.
But you need to know what you're doing before you get into this.
Right.
Whether you need to take a class, watch instructional, actual certified videos online, because going into it with bees, one, you can severely get injured. Two, if you are not, if you don't have the right information, you can kill your bees off very, very quickly. There's a way that you have to preserve the hive for winter, leave so much honey. We're not bee experts. We've never done bees.
Yeah.
But there's certain procedures and understandings of how to best manage that hive for the best success for you and for the bees.
Now, you may think, okay, I don't want to do that. What else can what's something simple that I can do to help the bees? Well, one would be to grow some flowers that bees like.
Just don't spray chemicals on your property.
Well, that too. But we're going to talk about the flowers.
Okay.
I know that Dollar Seed sells a bee attracting flower mix. You already may grow these kinds of flowers. You can go to your favorite search engine and just type bee helping flowers or bee attracting flowers. And this way, this will not only benefit the bees, but it'll benefit your garden. If you have bees coming to your garden, then they're gonna pollinate your plants.
And I forget the article and I forget where I saw it, but I think the number is something like 39 different flowers need to be a bees need from very beginning of spring all the way to fall in order for them to have the, and I could be very wrong, but I know the number was much higher than I had ever thought. But the number of flowers that bees need, because you think about what is one of the first flowers that you see in the spring? Dandelions.
Well, and crocuses.
And crocuses. And what is the first thing that many uneducated homeowners do when they see dandelions in their yard?
They spray them.
Spray them. So the bees are going to grab pollen from these flowers that have been tainted with a chemical. What happens to pollen when you take it back to a hive that's been that has chemicals in it? Mm-hmm. You're going to affect the whole ecosystem of that hive. So that's just something to think about when it comes to discarding unwanted weeds or flowers on a property.
Right. So that's definitely one thing you can try. That made me think of this thing I saw recently where this family, I think it was like in Sweden, they only ate, or they had their urine tested for pesticides, and then for 2 weeks they ate only organic, and then they had their urine tested again, and it turned out that those pesticides were gone. For the most part, there was just trace levels. So if you think about a bee getting the pesticides from a plant and then bringing it to the hive, that could obviously, I think, could spread.
Right, and bees have a much smaller system than humans.
Right.
Humans are able to tolerate a lot more unwanted material than a bee can.
So that's definitely something to think about. Even though you may not be spraying near your garden, maybe you should find a better method for that. Dandelions have many uses, so you could look into that. Otherwise, you want to make sure that you don't spray them. So,
and then there's other things that you can do with, attracting bees, isn't there? Mm-hmm. What other things can we do? Another thing is habitat loss. Whenever bees live naturally in I guess, fence rows or wood lines. Some will live in the ground, and the destruction of that is not helping the situation at all. Also, another study has found that electromagnetic radiation can affect bees. Now, this is like, I would assume, like Wi-Fi's and cell phone signals, and like everything in the world right now.
Yeah, it says here.
Now, this is from www.care2.com.
10 ways to save the bees.
Yeah.
It shows that the phones were kept inside beehives. Worker bees stopped coming to the hives after 10 days.
And even their egg production of the queen, decreased after this. And a warning on the iPhone says, do not hold closer than 5/8 of an inch away from your body. Okay, so obviously, if it's affecting the bees, and this has always been a theory for years, all of us holding cell phones and Wi-Fi devices, it's probably affecting us in more ways than we're aware of.
Right.
But that's a unique perspective on beehives and bee living. But ultimately, the whole deal is we're losing them. We may know why we're losing them. Genetically modified crops is one of the contributing factors that a number of studies have proven. We can't turn that around. But what we can do is introduce habitat in our own area.
Yeah, positive things for the bees. Flowers. Maybe think about, if there's habitat loss in your area, get involved. Check that kind of stuff out.
Recreation areas. So think about what you can do in your own property, on your own property, for $0 to no dollars to make your little part of the world a little better for one of the most important insects insects in the world, the honeybee. We'll be right back after this, where we talk about some of the fails that we've experienced, and we're not immune to it. We have problems in the garden too, right after this.
Do you want your next raised beds to be easy, functional, and beautiful? The Embrace helps you create the garden you've always wanted. Finally, raised beds that everyone can assemble and enjoy. No tools needed. Just slide any lumber into the Embrace corner, fill with your favorite soil mix, and you're ready to plant. Made from 100% recycled steel right here in the USA. And a portion of every sale helps to build school and community gardens all across the country. Let the Embrace help you create your next raised bed. Grow beautifully with the Embrace. Available at local garden centers and online at artofthegarden.net.
Paradigm Gardens, Wisconsin's largest progressive gardening center. Located in Madison, Wisconsin, Paradigm Gardens offers the largest selections of soil amendments, organic and salt-based plant nutrients, grow lights, and hydroponic systems available in the Midwest. Our knowledgeable and experienced sales staff are always available to help. Visit our new website, www.paradigmgardens.com, or visit our retail store at 4501 Helgeson Drive, Madison, Wisconsin, just off Stoughton Road.
Looking for a fast-acting, non-toxic weed killer for your organic garden? One that works in cool and cloudy conditions as low as 40 degrees and is highly biodegradable with visible results in less than 2 hours? Then look no more. Avenger Weed Killer has it all and more. Made from oranges, Avenger is highly effective, easy to use, and has a pleasant citrus aroma. It is OMRI listed and approved for organic gardeners under the USDA's National Organic Program. Avenger Weed Killer is a choice for organic gardeners and homeowners who are looking for an effective, safe way to control unwanted weeds. Available in ready-to-use sprays and concentrate. Ask your local lawn and garden supplier for Avenger Weed Killer. For more information and a list of suppliers, visit AvengerOrganics.com. Avenger Weed Killer, eco-friendly, deadly to weeds.
Hi, this is Nikki Jabor, author of The Year-Round Vegetable Gardener and Groundbreaking Food Gardens, which you can find at nikkijabor.com. And you're listening to Joey and Holly Baird on the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener podcast.
Welcome back to the program. If you want to find out more information about the sponsors you've just heard and our entire sponsor lineup and program, you can find them at the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com. Click on the podcast tab. You'll find those links at the top of the page and then our entire previous episodes here on the podcast. So let's talk about, it's time for our regular segment entitled, Tell me what you really think. So this week, this segment's all about open and candid. You know, we try to keep a very professional manner when doing videos as well as this podcast, but there's a time and a place where we can open up and really voice the opinion and thought that needs to be said. So Holly, this week, what is the topic of choice that we're going to be open and candid about?
People that follow food trends, things like gluten-free, paleo, and then all of a sudden 1 week they're on one and then on another one the next.
All right. You know a little bit more about those type of topics than I do, so why don't you have at it here?
Now, gluten-free, obviously there's people that have a legitimate reason to eat that way, whether they have the celiac disease or maybe some other sort of situation. But sometimes people will decide, okay, I'm going to do this because it's going to
under their own decision with no medical advice.
No medical advice.
Oh, okay. Now there's certain groups of you who are listening who really doesn't want to deal with the medical world because they're in it to make money, and if they can keep you sick, the money keeps going in their pocket, and it's all in a big circle. And there's some of you who, you know, actually need medical assistance, and it actually has benefited you, and there's a fine line between both of them.
Right. So basically, if you've been told to eat a certain way, and I'm not talking about for like weight loss or anything like that, I'm just talking about maybe if you have, a condition, like I said, like celiac or an autoimmune situation or something, you may have to eat a certain way to make it better for you, or to avoid just getting sick. So...
Well, we're not talking about those people.
No.
We're not talking about those people.
No, we're talking about people that are, my neighbor is going to not eat any apples this week, so I'm not going to eat any apples either. Or just stuff like that. It's just like, all of a sudden you have a friend who's vegetarian, and then the next week they're only eating meat and cheese or something, and then the next week or a couple weeks later it's something else. And this is like, okay, so what's the newest thing? Is it low carb, no carb, high carb, fat free, all fat, no fat, certain fats, things like that. And something to think about is this good for you? Is it good for your body? What are you doing to your body by switching it up all the time? Who knows? Your body could become, acclimated to, say you're eating a low carb lifestyle, and then all of a sudden you switch to, vegetarian or something that's going to kind of change. It might not change things a lot, but your body might not like it.
You have to have a balance.
Yeah.
It has to be a balance with anything you do, whether it's physical, mental, or edible.
Right.
There needs to be a balance to where you can handle it in a normal standard.
Right. So, basically, it's kind of like, do research. Just because your neighbor, friend, whatever, is doing this doesn't mean that you should. Doesn't mean it's good for you. I know a lot of people who they don't feel like they get much of a benefit out of eating meats, so they go kind of vegetarian or vegan. And I know a lot of people like myself who loves meat, and I think it's very good for you. Now, if you don't eat meat, you want to consider the fact that you don't get enough. You won't be getting enough B12. So that's something to think about if you decide to go that route. But
there's nothing wrong if they choose to go vegan or vegetarian or be a carnivore. What is that?
Carnivore.
Oh yeah, carnivore. It's a personal decision that one has to make, but you have to understand what the results of doing that exclusively will be in the long term.
Right. So that's definitely something to think about as well. Another thing is that, say you are eating for weight loss and you decide to try something different, like, for example, like the paleo, you might lose weight right away, and then if you say you fall back and you have some
relapse.
Bread, so you have some bread or you have some fruit or something, and then you relapse, and then all of a sudden you're starting to gain weight again. You can't blame it on the paleo. It's because you didn't stick to it. You didn't make it happen.
Real quickly, what kind of diet is a paleo?
It's like
paleo.
Paleo.
What for those of us who are not familiar with this type of?
It's also known as the caveman diet. From what I understand, you can eat meats and vegetables pretty much, and then some dairy. And I think some fruits. But
So what is the benefit of this versus a...
Because it's a no-carb thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, what irritates you is the people who want flavor of the week.
Yeah.
This week, it's popular, so I'm going to do it so I can be popular too. Mm-hmm. Is that all you got? All right, let's close the door on this topic. Well, when it comes to gardening, you, as well as us, all have issues and mistakes that are made and failures. Now, a mistake and a failure are not necessarily the same thing. Mistake is something that you were unfamiliar with going in. You did it incorrectly, and the end results show that. A failure is you went in doing the correct application, the correct method, and the results did not come out the way you had hoped. In gardening, you're not most gardeners, and I don't want to categorize everybody, but many people who garden and have gardened for any length of time have had failures. We all make mistakes in the garden, but failures are a yearly occurrence in most situations, in most growing in most growing areas.
And sometimes it's something that you have only done once, and you've learned from it. And sometimes it's something that you may have done once, and then it's been a few years, and you do it again.
And sometimes you don't really know why it happened.
Yeah.
So we'll go through some of the failures that we've had in our garden this year to date. Let's see. One would be in the large garden. We planted spinach, didn't come up, or very, very, very limited amount of spinach germinated. But we planted in the small garden, which is about 20 miles farther northeast of where the large garden is, and both are seen on our videos, and it did phenomenal. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those. I don't know. What was another failure we had?
We've mislabeled plants in the past.
That's not really a failure.
Well,
that's a mistake on our part. We had Brussels sprouts and
cabbage,
collards that was planted, and they didn't grow. But we turned that failure into a positive, and we had some leftover Russian banana link potatoes that we went ahead and planted in that bed. Mm-hmm. What other things did we have that at least it's been a failure this year?
Peppers.
Yeah, we started peppers indoors, had an infestation of aphids, and we had to do something that we had not done in a number of years, which was purchase starts at the local garden center, which there's nothing wrong with that, but we go into gardening each year with the expectation and the goal of being able to start everything from seed that we're going to grow in the garden.
Right.
Some other failures that we had. I'm trying to think. What other things did we have that? Also, we had some scarlet runner beans that we had saved from last year that we had planted in the ground and in a large black container. We planted, I believe, 18 of them or something, in 15 to 20 of them, and 3 of them ended up germinating. We believe because it was very warm that week, we went ahead and put them in the ground, and then it turned very cold for about 2 weeks following that, and the seeds rotted in the soil.
Right.
So we took the 3 that we had sporadically come up and put them all in the container and reutilized the trellis that we had designated for the scarlet runner beans to plant, regular pole beans in that area. Mm-hmm. And we had a problem with beets.
Yeah, so the beets we put in the ground kind of at a weird part in the spring, the normal time.
Which you can't wait until the 4th of July to plant stuff. You have to plant this stuff as early as possible, because here in southeast Wisconsin zone, I believe we're 5A, 5B, something like that. We only have about 150 days of frost-free days. Now, some of this stuff can handle some frost, but we're always trying to get it in as early as possible so we can get it harvested as soon as possible.
Right.
And it's different every year. But go ahead with the beet story.
So we planted these beets sometime in spring, and it rained, I think just a day after that or something. And then I think it rained a lot that week, actually. So we would assume that they just rotted in the ground. We don't have
It was
any...
cold, too.
Oh, yeah, it was cold. So we don't really have any beets. But
We are going to plant some fall beets. So.
Yeah, we're going to plant some fall beets. And, it's a part of life. And then if something takes over your whole crop or whatever, then you want to make sure you have a plan. Maybe you want to go to the farmer's market or something if you're going to use this stuff for winter. But with the beets, the biggest thing is that I think it was just because it was wet and cold.
So that's just some of the failures that we've experienced in our garden. Don't feel bad if you have experienced failures in yours. We all do it every single year. Coming up next, we will have Wayne Meador on from World for Change TV. Now, this was recorded before he made the decision to do a bike ride from Mississippi, from where he's from, to, I believe it's California. So you can follow that adventure on his website, A World for changetv.com. We'll talk to him about the website and all that right after this.
It's all about the soil at ManureT.com. With their grass-fed, antibiotic, and growth hormone-free cattle and horses, owner Annie Haven puts the quality in her premium soil conditioner. 100% organic and natural, whether feeding your flowers or veggies, indoors or out, you can grow organically with confidence. To purchase authentic Haven brand Manure Tea, small orders or large, go to ManureT.com. Always free shipping.
At DollarSeed.com, all of our seeds are only $1 a pack. And we have online resources that teach you all about the rewarding hobby of growing your own plants, flowers, herbs, and vegetables. Imagine the joy you'll feel when your children actually help you harvest your first garden crop, or the pride of knowing you'll never need a florist again. Visit DollarSeed.com and grow a little magic of your own for just $1. DollarSeed.com. What could be healthier?
A gardener knows that the key to a good plant is its roots. With poor roots, the end result is not good. Conventional pots and trays cause roots to wrap around and become root bound. Then you try to unwrap the roots at the time of planting, hoping not to break them. But never again with the Root Maker, a non-chemical innovation that naturally air prunes roots to create more vigorous roots. Never a root bound plant again. Whether trees, flowers, or edibles, home garden or commercial grower, more roots means healthier, more productive plants. To get your own, visit rootmaker.com.
Hi, this is Chris Van Cleve, host of the Rose Chat Podcast. You can hear us at rosechatpodcast.com. But right now, we're going to talk vegetables, and you're listening to Joey and Holly Baird on the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast.
Welcome back. If you'd like to find more information out about our sponsors, please visit our website at the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, and you can find it under the podcast tab.
Hey, let's head down to Alabama. Let's head down and talk with the founder of A World for Change TV. Now, World for Change TV is kind of a web-based TV station. It's growing in leaps and bounds every day. And it's about knowledgeable, sustainable, permacultural, utilizing the land. It's at A World for Change with the letter, or the number 4, change.com. And we're going to talk to the founder here. Welcome to the program, Wayne Meador. Welcome, Eric.
Hi, thank you. Nice to be here.
Well, we appreciate you coming on the program and you showing us, or our listeners and us, giving us some of that knowledgeable information that experience allows us to have.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for putting on a program like this. The audience is sure to get a lot of good knowledge from it. So thank you. I appreciate the work you're doing.
You're very welcome. Now, let's start off with when people go to aworldforchange.com, our listeners, and see your videos there, and they go to your YouTube channel and see what you're doing. You're all about being smart with the land, utilizing what you have available, permaculture, and practicing permaculture on your property. But and they'll look at you and go, well, this guy's been doing it all his life. And though that is the truth, you as a child, now looking back, kind of regret that you didn't retain or pay more attention to those in your immediate family growing up in Indiana. You didn't learn as much as maybe you wish you had.
Yeah, well, I've told this story several times on air, and I will continue to say it. Grandma, growing up, she was a master gardener, right? Never certified, but she was really truly a master. And my parents gardened every day. There was 4 of us boys in the family, but honestly, I didn't just sit down and pay attention to what they were doing, and I lost a lot of it. And so it's been part of, the most recent portion, the last 2 years of my life has really been focused on trying to focus on what it takes to be sustainable and to be more self-reliant and living on the land. And I think that's what part of my YouTube channel embodies, and it goes into a lot of DIY type of things. And so, yes, that is my personal channel, and I do focus on a lot of gardening now. And it's simply not just, I guess my focus really isn't just to share my knowledge. It's more along the lines of sharing as a community, and we all pitch back in, and we can all feed off of each other, and we can grow, and we can learn together. And that's one of the great values of a medium like YouTube. So, and like a podcast like this, like we're doing now. So it's incredible.
Now, I think you you and I are a bit alike in one sense, and and Holly can attest for this. When we see a pile of what most people would consider unusable material, we find a way to utilize it in one form or fashion to use to grow in. And you had a pile of what most people would call junk, and you turned them into very usable cold frames to grow virtually year-round there in Alabama.
Yeah, well, I mean, we live in the South, so let's play with the lovely winter that we have here, and we can get by with cold frames, and or cold frames with hoop houses over top, and that's what I've done. I've taken some simple ladder rails from like the fiberglass Werner ladders that you see in Lowe's and Home Depot. We had a factory that went out of business here, and so they had a lot of these ladders that just different employees have taken home, and they're all over Craigslist. So I've picked up these piles of ladder rails, and I'm using them for virtually everything that I need to build that I would usually use a 2x4 stud with, and old tin and windows, and most of the projects that I do are all based on materials that I picked up for free. So to continue to purchase new materials and expend energy and hurt our planet or the future of the sustainability of humanity when I can reuse an old piece of material and not put any more energy into producing a new item that I can get by without.
Right, and with those ladders, obviously with each generation of cold frame, you realize things you tweak and you change. Did it work out the way you had envisioned it, the initial goal, or did you have to kind of do different tweaks to it?
No, actually, it worked out. It really did work out. I spent a lot of time thinking about how I was building them, and with the structure, I put a lot of research into it. You can go to the website, again, worldforchange.com, and you can find blogs that are focused on that and YouTube videos that go along with those blogs to really help people to understand what you're doing with the cold frame. I think there's 3 videos so far in the cold frame series.
And I like the way you've built your cold frames because they've got height. They're 2.5, 3 foot tall. So in a traditional garden, if it's getting cold, you can just walk that thing over, set it on top of a pepper plant or a small tomato plant, and you've kind of already, you've got a little mini greenhouse for that plant. Yep,
that's absolutely right. And I can't tell you the number of people that have said, and gardeners that most of us know on YouTube, they've said, I'm going to build one of those this year. So it's been really helpful. It's something that's perfect to set on top of like a raised bed. That's a 2 foot wide raised bed. So it's just come in real handy for me.
Now there's one thing you do, which maybe some people haven't heard of or seen, and it's the wicking garden bed. Could you tell us more about that, how you came up with it and how it works?
Yeah, Holly. I'll tell you how I came up with it. How I came up with it was from Larry Hall. Again, another YouTuber that most of us are probably familiar with. But I decided to do some things myself a little bit differently than what others have done. It's simply a round kiddie pool that you pick up at any of the major box stores, and I've taken any kind of bucket material. I used in one of these wicking beds, I used a trash can, I believe a bucket, and some nursery pots, and filled those pots up with dirt and set them inside the kiddie pool, and then allow 2 to 3 inches of water to fill up inside that kiddie pool, and that will create a wicking action up into the pots, which you've drilled holes in the bottom of, and that allows your dirt to retain the amount of moisture. And frankly, it actually uses I think it's around 90% less, or 90% less water than a traditional gardening method. So wicking pots or wicking planters really are an excellent way to go. And then the thing that I added on really to step up my DIY mentality kind of on my YouTube channel and just what I do with life is I used the aggregate that I have here locally on the property that we live on, and I screened it and sifted it using different types of screening methods. And people who follow me on Google Plus and or again on YouTube would know that I've went through quite a few different steps to come out with several different sizes of rock or aggregate that then I've filled in around all of those pots, and that rock comes up above the water level. Therefore, you don't have a breeding ground for mosquitoes, and it's aesthetically pleasing. And then on top of that, I've added floats to the water inlet. So now that it's completely self-contained, the water is not visible, and I can walk away and leave the plants for days at a time. And when you're running a small business, and I also work full-time as well, you just don't have time to tend to plants. And for me, being sustainable means that I'm going to come up with new ways to garden and ways that's going to amplify the effort that I put out.
And for our listeners, if you're in an area where you're not allowed to dig in the ground, this wicking garden really looks pretty, and it's very effective too.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I tried to design. I really do put a lot of effort into the aesthetics of a design, even if I'm using recycled or upcycled, repurposed materials, or using materials for a different purpose. I do a lot of different things like that. So I hope it's helpful to people.
Now, Wayne, we talk a lot on this program about soil. Obviously, soil is in everything we do. But last year, you were you became very fortunate. It's one of these things in life. You meet the right people at the right time. You found an incredible amount of wonderful topsoil from a sawmill that had just been piling this up for like 20 plus years. And now that can be a great resource to use, but you just can't take wood chips, throw them in the backyard, and expect in a year to have compost. There's a certain process, and in some cases, certain wood chips that you want to avoid. But you did an incredible find on this. Talk a little bit about how you came about finding this wonderful resource.
Well, I'll tell you how I found it. It was through a friend of a friend. So you're right, it is who you know. But the point I'd like to make is you're never going to find it if you don't open your mouth and start looking and asking for it. And so we run across a farmer who has, again, had this sawmill, and he's been cutting logs at this sawmill for years, 15 to 25 years, somewhere in that range, and been pushing the shavings and all of the sawdust from his sawmill with his skid loader, pushing it over the back hill on his property. And this stuff's been sitting there and composting. And so, it takes a lot of work to get down there, and it's you got to fight through the weeds to get back where you can just dig into this rich black. I just say it's black gold compost, because that's pretty much what it is. And so, yes, you can't take that and just spread it on your garden and mix it into the dirt and be fine, because you're robbing the nitrogen during the breaking, the composting process. But after years of setting like this, it's just incredible dirt, and I would encourage anybody to try to reach out and think about the other alternatives that they might have in their local area, or within a reasonable driving distance. to get maybe outside of the city to the suburbs where they might find people who would have these types of scraps as a byproduct from something that they're doing with their business. And, you know, sawmills, lumber yards, and that kind of thing, it's a great place to start. And I hope, again, to give a lot of ideas or cause people to stop and think a little bit about other alternatives.
Definitely makes sense. Now, vermicomposting is the process of composting with worms, which is something that you do. If you want to tell us more about that, how you got started in that, and if it's cost effective, if there's a lot of cost that goes into that.
Well, yeah, I mean, with worms, how I got started is I simply just said, look, I want to try it, and if I wanted to be able to figure out how to have this circular ecosystem, if you will, or this circular life cycle of food and fertilizer, and so I decided to go with worms. And not only that, it's something that you can do in a small confined space. And at the time when I started Ben, I didn't have a lot of room, and anybody with an apartment or that lives in a condo or in the city could easily have a worm farm and could compost their food scraps coming out of the kitchen. What's nice about that is it is cost effective because you've turned those food scraps into an input. Again, this is the permaculture mindset, but turning the food scraps into an input that goes back to your garden. And it was better than just a decomposing food scrap because now you've introduced that food to a worm's habitat, and that worm has turned it into worm castings, and the castings now go back into a worm casting tea, if you will, which is what I like to make to fertilize my plants in the summer, but a worm casting tea, or they can be planted or used to plant your seedlings in this spring. I like to plant in 100% worm castings, and they just do incredible. They germinate very fast, and they grow because they have all the nutrients they need instantly as soon as they start to sprout roots. So that's what I get out of the worm farm. I have two different kinds of worms, red wigglers and Alabama jumpers. And the Alabama jumpers are really taking off now. It's taken me quite a while to figure them out. They're a little tougher to manipulate. But that being said, I really can't wait till this spring when things start to warm up a little bit and I can start to split up the colonies, the worm farms, into multiple farms and take especially the Alabama jumpers and use them in the hard red clay that we have here because they do such a fantastic job of breaking up clay. So of getting down in and really working a soil. And if you've got good nutrient-rich dark soil like the worm castings and or the compost that we talked about on top, when it rains, then you've got a lot of holes in that clay, and you start to turn the soil over, and the worms are doing all that for you. So as your colonies of worms continue to produce, you keep pulling worms out, and you use those worms in your garden. So, I mean, I think it's an awesome little way to take control of your fertilization cycle and what's happening in your garden.
Yeah. And absolutely, Wayne. Before I let you go, I want to make mention to our listeners that you and Jared Stanley from J&J Acres or permasapien.com, you guys had a project on the Google Plus page, a couple of hangouts over this past winter. I want to let you tell a little bit more about that and where the listeners can get a hold of that information, because I think it's vital to anybody that's got any land whatsoever.
Yeah. I'm not the expert at permaculture, so I decided to bring in a friend of mine, Jared Stanley, J&J Acres, and he runs the permasapien.com website. Basically, what he's doing is he's walking me through what it's like to design the property that we live on with that permaculture mindset. And we're recording every step of the way, and we're sharing that with the audience. Now, we haven't released that series yet. It should be released by the time of the airing of this podcast, and so I'll make sure that you all have links to where people can go and they can sign up for the course. I'm not exactly, or the series rather, but I'm not exactly sure what we're going to charge for it, and at that time it may be free.
Well, Wayne, greatly appreciate you. We greatly appreciate you coming on, sharing your knowledge. Again, to our listeners, we'll have all those links in the show notes so you can very easily connect with Wayne Meador at aworldforchange.com. That 4 is the number, and we thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And we'll be right back after this.
Oh, yeah. What you say? You say Nasala Kombucha. It'll put some glide in your stride and some pep in your step. Nasala Kombucha. Yeah.
Nasala Kombucha makes your body happy. Nasala Kombucha makes your body smile.
If you could double the life of your raised bed boxes by sealing the wood with a non-toxic wood preservative, would you? Well, now you can with a clear, penetrating product called Internal Wood Stabilizer. It's 100% non-toxic and easy to apply. Seal your bare, untreated wood surfaces, even chicken coops, by spraying Internal Wood Stabilizer. It's invisible, seals the wood from the inside out, and never wears off. Recommended by organic gardening experts. Internal Wood Stabilizer. Check it out at timberprocoatings.com. It's Joey
and Holly Baird
of the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast, taking a moment to remind you that you can sign up for a weekly email so you don't miss anything that we do, our podcasts, our videos, our digital quarterly magazine. You won't miss anything by signing up.
Just go onto our website on the right-hand side. There's a big button for you to press. Just go ahead and sign up for our emails.
And you can also ask us questions. Underneath that big green button, there's a big red button. So sign up for our emails for free. No spam, and if you got a question, you can send us that as well. WisconsinVegetableGardener.com for the health-conscious organic gardener worldwide.
Hey everybody, this is Jared from PermaSapien.com, and I am all about employing permaculture wisely. Right now, you are listening to Joey and Holly Baird on the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast.
Welcome back to the program. If you want to find out more about the sponsors you've just heard and our entire sponsor lineup, check them out at the website, thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com. Click on the podcast tab at the top of the page. You can find all their links there as well as previous episodes. And that information is in the show notes below. So we got 2 more important topics to cover before we get out of here today. So don't hang up. Don't turn it off. Stay with us for our Gardening in 2 Minutes, and then we're going to talk about how you can have a miniature orchard in your house. We're going to talk about dwarf fruit and nut trees. Gardening in 2 Minutes is an audio production that Holly and I produce on a weekly basis for a number of podcasts and a few radio programs. If you would like Gardening in 2 Minutes on your particular program, contact us through the website. This Gardening in 2 Minutes is about...
We're going to go back to last year where we created this for our podcast friends about the importance of weeding in the fall.
This Gardening in 2 Minutes is sponsored by Body, Mind, and Soil Hose-In Filtration System. Don't poison your soil with municipal water. Attach a Body, Mind, and Soil Hose-In Filtration System. Free shipping exclusively through the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com. Just click on the icon on the right-hand side of the lower main page. Average use, 26 weeks at 1 hour of use a week, 25,000 gallons before replacement filter is needed. Body, Mind, and Soil. And here is Gardening in 2 Minutes. This is Gardening in 2 Minutes. Though it may be the fall, there's still time to weed. Now, you may think weeding is only a springtime or a summertime activity, but weeding in the fall is very crucial to getting a good start next spring.
There are some reasons why you should weed in the fall, and these include: one is so that you can prevent having more weeds come up in the spring by having the seeds get into your soil.
During the summer, the seeds, if you let them get away from you, the weeds will produce seed pods. Now, if you can catch them before they put the seed pods on and distribute the seeds in your garden, you're a step ahead. But if you have not got to that point and the plants have already put seeds on and distributed them, the weeds, then you're going to have more weeds come up next spring. So by extracting them out of your garden bed now, you will still have enough warm days that allows at least some of them to begin to germinate, and that way you can start purging the garden bed, your raised berm, wherever you're growing at, from some of those weed seeds. You're still going to have weeds in your garden. When you let weeds go to seed, you're looking at about a 7-year span before you can actually get a clean bed again if you work diligent at it.
So that's one thing, is to prevent those seeds from growing over the winter, or in the spring, come back up in the spring. Another thing is to get the roots out, the weed roots out, because that prevents the weeds from coming back as well.
Many weeds, if you just pull them out and leave the roots in, they are designed by nature to propagate from very small fragmentations of roots. So you may extract a large plant and leave a little root, and that root will soon begin to grow a very large plant again. For more information regarding weeds and weeding, for our weekly video productions, as well as our free downloadable digital quarterly magazine, you can find all that information at
thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.
For the health-conscious organic gardener worldwide. For Gardening in 2 Minutes, I'm Joey Baird.
And I'm Holly Baird.
So let's talk about, we talked about the importance there of the weeding in the fall, but let's talk about the options you have indoors when it comes to items you can grow. And I'm talking about dwarf varieties of fruit trees.
Yes.
Now we have a dwarf lime tree. Now this was maybe not the best choice for us because we'd much rather have like a pomegranate or a lime tree or a lemon tree or something like that. But we got this, about 4 years ago?
3 or 4 years.
3 or 4 years ago, and when we got it, it looked like you went out in the yard and found a stick. And we've got some videos way back on the website, the YouTube channel about it. It looked like a dead stick, and it took about 2.5, 3 years before it actually began to put fruit on or flowered. Now we moved it outside one summer, moved it back in that fall, which we later found out was not maybe the best thing because of the fluctuation in ambient temperature. So we have left it in the south-facing window of our kitchen ever since then. Now, true enough, whenever you have a fruit tree blossom or flower indoors, you don't have bees. So you've got to take the Q-tip and move it from flower to flower in order to pollinate so you can get limes. Now with any of these that we're going to talk about. Now with the limes, they are about golf ball size whenever they reach a mature state.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
So this dwarf tree concept, or miniature trees, whatever you want to call them, is basically just something that's been they've basically mutated it, whatever you want to call it, not like genetically modified, but just changed, and so that they grow dwarf.
The basic concept here is they have a special rootstock,
right,
and then they take the variety that they want to grow and graft it by, if you want to look more into it, it's called grafting, by grafting the top portion onto the rootstock, and then that will allow the plant to grow in that dwarf type of size, that bushiness.
So how they are different from a regular tree is obviously they're going to be shorter. They're going to be much shorter. Mostly they'll get up to 6 feet tall, but that's it. And then they're also bushier. They're going to have big bushy tops as opposed to maybe some trees that don't have they're not dwarf cousins.
No, we don't have a 6-foot lime tree.
Right, ours is about probably 4 feet tall.
3 to 4 foot tall. Now, just like anything else in the world, in the gardening world, the tree is going to grow to the size of the container that it is placed in. We've got, I'm going to guess a 30-gallon, or 20 to 30-gallon terracotta pot that we've got this growing in. Now, with all of this growing indoors and with the fruit trees, one of the things that we have found with ours, and this is very common across all realms of dwarf fruit tree varieties, is they're susceptible to too much watering. With that, the leaves will start to change color and fall off. So there's a lot of things that you need to kind of read up on.
So these trees are effective. They have early bearing fruit. So they're that you're going to get fruit a little earlier. They have higher fruit yields, so you're going to get more fruit, and it's going to come earlier.
Well, we've experienced that.
Yeah, and then there's going to be better fruit flavor, so it's going to be more of a just like anything that's homegrown. You're going to have a better flavor. You can tell the difference between homegrown tomatoes versus a homegrown, not a homegrown tomato, like a store-bought tomato. There's a big difference in that flavor.
But also, it's what you feed the plant, too.
Right.
If you feed the plant chemicals, you're going to eat chemicals. And again, if you're indoors, and we're in Zone 5A, 5B, you got to have a lot of light source throughout the year.
Yeah.
And you have to hand pollinate, because these things will start blooming real early in the year, and then all of a sudden now it was late year last year when we harvested,
right?
And then we've just got blooms on it now, and it's midway through the year.
And it's just talking here how there's easy maintenance, and it is easy, especially if it's in your kitchen, to water it, to if you need to prune it or to pick the fruit.
Right.
It's pretty
now,
easy.
one thing that we've found on ours is that one side is bare. Mm-hmm. Because it all leans towards the window to get ambient as much light as it can. So one side is extremely bushy up against the window, and the side that's away from the window just sticks.
Right.
But there's nothing wrong with that. The tree's fine.
Yeah.
Obviously, I guess the ideal thing would be every 3 weeks or 4 weeks to rotate it, all this stuff to get a full tree. That's what the book says. And if you followed us very much on the podcast or on the video series, we don't go by what the book says to the T very often.
So then also they adapt easier. So wherever you put them, they're going to naturally adapt to where they are.
Which that brings up the whole moving it in and out of the house in the summer. We're never going to do that again because that really messed with its
I think it lost blooms.
It lost blooms. Yeah. Because of the change in climate. Mm-hmm. Inside was kind of a house atmosphere, and outside was the fluctuation of cool nights and warm days and back. So, if we had the room, we definitely would increase the number of dwarf trees that we have. Yeah. We would get a lime tree, a pomegranate tree. We have
a lime tree now. We would get a lemon tree.
Lemon tree, pomegranate tree. We would get a number of other trees to increase.
Money tree?
Well, I don't think they sell money trees. At least not the catalogs I'm looking at.
All right.
So
dwarf trees, they're pretty cool, and we love ours. Except for when it's blooming, it smells really funny. But it's cool to have it, and people are like, "What is that?" And you tell them, and they think it's neat. I decorated it for Christmas one year.
Yeah, instead of having a Christmas tree,
Yeah. So it's something different to have, and it's something to look into, especially if you want to do, maybe you want a tree, but you don't want to commit to a tree, and you know that having a full-size fruit tree is going to take up space and take a long time. You could look at this.
Yeah, definitely. And this would be a nice little accessory to, and it's low maintenance here, to maybe an elderly individual who has ambient light sources, because it brings part of nature indoors. Well, that'll wrap it up for this week's episode, ladies and gentlemen. We greatly appreciate you tuning in, downloading, sharing this information with your gardening friends and family. For the audio that you've heard on the program, the music that's courtesy of freesfx.co.uk and audioneutronics.com, two royalty-free and copyright-free websites we use to help liven up the podcast.
And Ness Alla and Paradigm Gardens,
as well as
DollarSeed.com, has their own music.
So until next time, I'm Joy Baird.
And I'm Holly Baird.
And we will see you in the garden. The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast is a production of the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com for the health-conscious organic gardener worldwide, and distributed in association with WI Garden Media.